Imagine walking into a laboratory expecting to witness the future of science, only to leave feeling like you're trapped in a nightmare. That's right. Throughout history, scientists chasing revolutionary breakthroughs have stumbled into accidents that border on the terrifying. And believe it or not, some of these mistakes were so shocking they seem like scenes from a horror movie. But they happened in real life. Today, we're diving into cases where human curiosity pushed too far and experiments revealed the darker side of science. From a gas that turned battlefields into a green inferno, to invisible particles that triggered warnings of a nuclear disaster, these episodes show that knowledge can be both a beacon of light and a ticking bomb ready to explode. Here's a thought-provoking question. Is the price of progress this constant risk of stumbling into the unknown? In this video, you'll discover experiments that started as brilliant promises but ended with unexpected, terrifying, and sometimes deadly consequences. Buckle up for a journey through the time and space of science, where each story serves as a reminder that tampering with nature demands more caution than courage. So take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear will change how you view some of the greatest accidents in scientific history. Picture this. You're in a trench during World War I. The silence is broken by a distant whistle. Suddenly, a yellowish cloud spreads across the field. It looks like mere smoke, but within seconds, soldiers are coughing uncontrollably, their skin burning, their eyes stinging as if on fire. What seemed like a scientific breakthrough to speed up the war's end became one of history's cruelest horrors: the use of mustard gas. Developed from chemical compounds initially studied in labs for industrial purposes, this gas quickly became an invisible, nearly unstoppable weapon. It wasn't a bullet you could dodge or a bomb that exploded once. It was worse. A silent mist that seeped into the lungs and corroded the body from within. The scariest part? Symptoms often appeared hours after exposure. Soldiers thought they were safe, only to find their skin blistering and their breathing failing, collapsing to the ground. It was as if the enemy was inside their own bodies. And to think, this all stemmed from studies that, in theory, could have led to peaceful chemical advancements, but instead ushered in an era where science revealed its darkest side. But hold on, because that was just the beginning. The next experiment gone wrong didn't happen on a battlefield, but inside a laboratory, and it nearly triggered a nuclear catastrophe. Imagine holding literally an atomic bomb in your hands, but it doesn't explode. Sounds improbable, right? Yet that's exactly what happened in Los Alamos during tests with a piece of plutonium known as the Demon Core. This radioactive metal core was created during the Manhattan Project, the same initiative that developed the bombs dropped on Japan. The plan was to use it for a third nuclear bomb if needed, but the war ended before it was deployed. So what to do with that piece of plutonium? Study it, of course, and that's where the tragedy began. In 1945, a scientist named Harry Daghlian was manipulating metal blocks around the core to observe reactions. One wrong move caused the blocks to fall into the wrong position, and within seconds, the core went critical. Daghlian was exposed to a lethal dose of radiation and died weeks later in unimaginable agony. As if that weren't enough, the following year, another scientist, Louis Slotin, conducted similar tests. Once again, a simple mistake, a screwdriver slipping, released fatal levels of radiation. Slotin died days later. The Demon Core earned its nickname because it seemed cursed, claiming the lives of those who got too close. It was as if science had created an object with a mind of its own, thirsty for vengeance. If that gave you chills, wait until you hear about a medical experiment that seemed promising, but turned patients into victims of a devastating mistake. Picture this. It's the 1950s, and you're pregnant, struggling with severe nausea. Your doctor prescribes a new drug that promises to quickly and safely relieve your discomfort. Sounds like a dream, right? That's how thousands of women were introduced to thalidomide, a drug touted as harmless and even revolutionary. The problem? No one anticipated the nightmare that was about to unfold. Safety testing was inadequate and didn't include pregnant women. The result? When the drug was widely used, its side effects emerged in a brutal way. Babies were born with severe deformities, shortened or absent arms and legs, malformed bones, hearing and vision problems. In some cases, the infants didn't survive birth. It's estimated that over 10,000 babies were affected across multiple countries. The most terrifying part? The drug was sold for years before being pulled from the market. The promise of a safe treatment became one of the biggest pharmaceutical scandals in history. It was as if science had handed out a gift wrapped in golden paper, hiding a bomb inside. The thalidomide case forever changed how drugs are tested and approved. Today's rigorous safety protocols exist only because this mistake left scars too deep to erase. But if you think only drugs can cause tragedies, wait until you hear about a lab experiment that accidentally created an invisible pandemic monster. Imagine being in an ultra-secret lab with scientists in full protective gear, handling viruses capable of wiping out entire populations. Sounds like a scene from an apocalyptic movie, doesn't it? But it's happened in real life. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union heavily invested in biological weapons programs. The goal was simple and terrifying: to turn microorganisms into weapons as deadly as, or deadlier than, nuclear bombs. Viruses like smallpox and bacteria like the plague were cultivated, modified, and stockpiled in quantities capable of ending humanity multiple times over. The risk wasn't just on the battlefield. Real accidents happened. In 1979, in the Soviet city of Sverdlovsk, a lab error released anthrax spores into the air. The invisible cloud spread silently, infecting dozens of people. Many died within days, with symptoms so aggressive they seemed straight out of a horror story. The strangest part? For years, the government covered up the accident, claiming the deaths were caused by tainted meat. Only decades later was the truth revealed. A simple technical error nearly turned an entire city into a graveyard. It's as if humanity had created its own invisible monster and lost control of it. But hold on, because disasters didn't only come from military labs. In the next case, we'll talk about a scientist who wanted to create a clean energy source and ended up discovering what seemed like a miniature sun inside a machine. Picture a nuclear reactor, a giant structure of concrete and steel where scientists and engineers believed they had tamed the power of the atom. It was April 1986 in Pripyat, Ukraine, and inside the Chernobyl plant, a seemingly simple test was underway, simulating a power outage to check if the reactor could keep its cooling system running. But nothing went as planned. Within minutes, a series of human errors and technical failures turned the experiment into a catastrophe. Reactor number 4 went into an uncontrolled chain reaction, releasing energy equivalent to hundreds of Hiroshima bombs. The steel roof was blasted into the air, and an explosion lit up the night sky as if a sun had risen in the middle of the darkness. The scariest part? It wasn't just the explosion, but the invisible radiation that escaped. Workers and firefighters who rushed to extinguish the blaze had no idea they were being slowly poisoned. Many died within days, while the contamination spread thousands of kilometers. To think it all started with a routine test meant to improve the system's safety. It's as if someone lit a match to check for a gas leak and blew up the entire house. Chernobyl became an eternal symbol of how the quest for energy can turn into a global nightmare. But the list isn't just about dangerous atoms. The next experiment involves the human mind, and its results were so disturbing that they still spark ethical debates worldwide. Picture yourself in a stark white room, receiving orders from a lab-coated researcher. In front of you is a machine with buttons that deliver increasingly powerful electric shocks to another person. The victim screams, begs, pleads for it to stop. Yet the authoritative voice tells you to keep going. What would you do? This was the setup of the Milgram experiment, conducted in the 1960s to test how far people would obey orders, even when they knew they were hurting someone. The shocks, of course, were fake, but the volunteers believed they were real. The result? Most continued to the end, delivering shocks that, in theory, would have been fatal, all because someone in a lab coat said it was necessary for science. And it didn't stop there. A few years later, another even more disturbing study gained notoriety: the Stanford prison experiment. Volunteers were divided into guards and prisoners in a simulated prison. Within less than a week, the guards were psychologically abusing the prisoners, humiliating and even assaulting them. The experiment had to be stopped because things had spiraled completely out of control. The most chilling part? None of these volunteers were naturally cruel. The circumstances and the sense of power turned ordinary people into oppressors. It's as if humans carry a hidden dark side, just waiting for the right situation to surface. And if you thought the human mind was dangerous, wait until you hear about the time scientists decided to tamper not with emotions, but with the Earth's climate. Imagine being able to control hurricanes, diverting storms before they hit entire cities. Sounds like a sci-fi superpower, doesn't it? That's exactly what the United States attempted during the Cold War with a project called Storm Fury. The idea was simple on paper but wildly ambitious in practice. Drop silver iodide particles into hurricanes, hoping to weaken their winds and reduce their impact. Planes flew into the eye of hurricanes, releasing tons of the chemical, as if trying to seed a new path for the storm. And what happened? Well, nothing went as expected. Some hurricanes seemed to lose strength, but others simply ignored the intervention and became even more destructive. The most concerning possibility? Instead of weakening storms, scientists might have been altering their paths unpredictably, redirecting destruction to unprepared areas. In the end, the project was abandoned, but it left behind an unsettling question. How safe is it to manipulate natural forces we barely understand? It's like trying to tame a starving tiger with a plastic collar. The intention might be good, but the risk of being devoured is enormous. And if controlling hurricanes sounds bold, wait until you hear about the experiment where scientists tampered with subatomic particles and sparked fears of creating a black hole on Earth. Imagine waking up to a headline: "Experiment could create black hole on Earth." Sounds like a joke or clickbait, but in 2008, this was a real concern when the Large Hadron Collider, LHC, in Switzerland was powered on for the first time. The LHC is the world's largest particle accelerator, a 20-kilometer circular tunnel buried beneath the Swiss-French border. There, scientists collide protons at near-light speeds to unlock the universe's secrets. One hope was to detect the elusive Higgs boson, the so-called God particle. But before the first collision, rumors spread. What if the energy released was so immense it created a microscopic black hole? And what if that black hole started swallowing everything around it, triggering a chain reaction that could end the planet? There were even lawsuits to stop the collider from operating. With each test, some imagined the Earth being sucked into itself, like paper swirling down a drain. Of course, scientists assured that the risk was virtually non-existent, and indeed nothing of the sort happened. The LHC continues to operate and has delivered groundbreaking discoveries, but the mere fact that the possibility was raised shows how science sometimes flirts with humanity's deepest fear, vanishing without a trace. To wrap up this list of experiments gone wrong, or nearly so, let's talk about a case where the search for a miracle for the human body ended in something straight out of a horror movie. Imagine a treatment promising to regenerate tissues, cure incurable diseases, and even slow aging. Sounds like science fiction, right? That was the promise surrounding early experimental cell and hormone therapies in the 20th century. One of the most infamous cases involved French doctor Serge Voronov, who believed he'd discovered the fountain of youth. His idea? Transplant monkey testicle tissue into humans to rejuvenate patients. Yes, you read that right. And unbelievably, wealthy people at the time paid fortunes to undergo these surgeries. The result? No proven positive effects. On the contrary, patients suffered infections, rejections, and disastrous consequences. What was supposed to be a medical miracle became a laughingstock, and a warning about the dangers of chasing miracle solutions without solid scientific backing. This episode is just one example of how, throughout history, the pursuit of progress has led us to cross dangerous lines. From mustard gas to the demon core, from thalidomide to fears of black holes, each failed experiment left a scar and a lesson. So here's the question. How far is it worth risking in the name of science? Now I want to hear from you. Which of these experiments shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. Oh, and don't forget, give this video a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next mind-blowing stories.